Right, good evening, everyone. My name is Jason Enix. I am superintendent of Huber Heights City Schools. Would like to welcome you to the Huber Heights City Schools 2024 redistricting study, our first public information session. We are glad to have all of you here with us tonight, either on our Zoom meeting. We've got a couple here in person at the ITC at Studebaker. And for those of you watching the recording of this session at a later time that's more convenient for you, again, welcome. And we're glad all of you are willing to participate in this very important process. Tonight is the public kickoff of the interdistrict study or redistricting study, I'm sorry, that has really been underway for about the last roughly 3 to 4 months or so. The Board of Education has been engaging with this idea anyway since about December. And the backstory of that is we really have had this idea in the district since about 2020, 2021 school year, when this became a part of the strategic plan that was initially passed by the board or approved by the board in 2021. While there was no work directly related to that in the following years, as part of our revisit and revision of the strategic plan that was just finished up this past December, this idea of studying or restudying the redistricting process was something that was continued as part of the strategic plan. And so it was really an idea that really was born out of the continuation of the strategic planning process. I mentioned the Board of Education. I'd like to welcome Board of Education members that have joined us here this evening. Again, I just would like to clarify tonight, it's a public information session. This is not a meeting of the Board of Education. And as such, our board members who are joining us tonight are casual observers to see the presentation for the first time, just like everyone else. And again, there will be no action taken tonight, as this is strictly an information session for all of us that will be watching. So thank you to our board members who have joined this evening. Wanted to just talk very briefly before I turn it over to our facilitators, Cropper GIS. We have a great relationship with Cropper GIS. Something that's very important to note about continuing our work with Cropper GIS is that we did work with them last year on a redistricting discussion, but we really followed that idea anyway from a population enrollment study that was done last fall, when we saw a significant increase in our population enrollment in the district at the start of the 22-23 school year. That study really prompted us to really think about the idea of redistricting, although last year was not the right time to do so. We are now a year removed from that, and the importance of this process is really, again, still very much in the forefront of the district plan. So without any further introduction from me, we're really more interested in the information provided by Matt Cropper from Cropper GIS and his team. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Mr. Cropper, as he will be running through our presentation tonight. Again, this is a webinar format, and I'll allow him to explain a little bit of that as we get started here this evening. And how this will work. We really are intended to have about a 30 to 40-minute session tonight, with the potential for some questions and answers through the chat feature at the end. So Mr. Cropper, thank you for joining us and leading us through this process, and welcome.
Thank you, Superintendent Enix. My name is Matthew Cropper with Cropper GIS Consulting. And as the superintendent said, we are Cropper GIS. We are consultants based out of Ohio. My office is just a little bit north of you in Delaware, Ohio. But we have staff all over the country, and our specialty is just this kind of work. We do a lot of school redistricting work for school districts across the United States. We also do demographic study work, a 10-year enrollment forecasts and things like that, which we have done for this district and a number of other districts in the state in the United States. And then we also help districts with things related to school capacity, revolving around facilities, and helping them understand how many students each building can hold, and do logistical planning as it relates around facilities. But we are here to talk about redistricting and work on redistricting with this district. This is just a sampling of some of the schools locally that we've worked with on various efforts. And so you could see we've worked with districts of all sizes, not on this list, but we've worked with everyone from 2,000 students all the way up to over 200,000 students. And so we bring a lot of expertise to the table on how other communities address challenges and things like that, and how they tackle these types of tough projects in order to get them to be done successfully and on time. I am Matthew Cropper. I have over 20 years experience in doing this. Like I said, I'm the president of the company and manage these projects for school districts all across the United States. In addition to working with schools, we do a lot of work also with government, a city and county government. And I also have worked with the United States Department of Justice, this Office of Civil Rights, for since about 2007. So quite some time. And so have a lot of experience in bringing to the table, and honored to be working with you and your district on this particular effort. So why are we here? Why is there a need to do redistricting? Well, the district is undertaking this study to address imbalances in school utilization and enrollment, and then also proactively align with future facility plans. There is also with Huber Heights, there are a number of satellite boundaries or boundaries that are not connected to the main boundary that you may know about if you've seen a map of the district. And one of the things that we're looking at doing is trying to get students as close to schools, as close to their home as possible, and as part of this process as well. So we're focusing on elementary attendance boundaries, ensure that the district is maintaining equity in school enrollment size and demographics, because the district does take pride and does have a very good equitable system in terms of the schools all reflect the demographics of the entire community at all of the schools. And so that's something that we certainly want to maintain. Another objective potentially that we may be looking at, and it hasn't been discussed or considered yet, but we are potentially considering the configuration of schools within the district to see if there's maybe any changes to grade configuration or school uses to ensure that schools are operating efficiently. So we want to do things efficiently and effectively, but do it without impacting the community, and making sure that you still have good quality schools in your district as they currently are. So we were hired by the district to develop materials to help facilitate this study, facilitate this process as an expert in doing this work with districts all across the United States. We do believe in enabling the public with the ability to do this kind of work. And so, and to be able to see what's happening and to give us input, because it's very important to hear what the public has to say and take that into consideration as work is being done. And we leverage our expertise as experts in doing this and working through a plan, and ultimately working to recommend a redistricting plan to the school board. So there are a set of criteria, and these are basically the rules to follow when you determine if a boundary line should move from in an area or a neighborhood or a street should get moved from one school to another. The best plan, when this is all said and done, will be one that touches on these criteria as a whole as best as possible. And so these criteria include things like balanced school facility utilization. So make sure that there's an equitable amount of seats available in every school. But while doing that, be mindful of future growth. And so if there's an area that is expected to grow, or an area that may be expected for enrollment to decline, account for that. So we could be a little proactive. We may be able to take one school a little bit more full if enrollment's declining, and if an area is growing, we could maybe put fewer students in that building so that they can adapt and the community, as the community grows, the school will not become overcrowded. Close proximity, and trying to assign students as close to their home as possible, while looking and focusing on the other elements of these criteria. Maximize busing efficiencies in transportation. So that goes along with proximity. If we get students as close to their home as possible, buses are not on the roads any longer than they have to be. And that essentially equates to bus efficiency and transportation efficiency. minimize the impact on students. And so anytime we're doing this, we always are mindful of the individual student and what the impacts are. So as we start to work into options and start to develop maps, then we will start to be counting how many students would be impacted so that we can measure that and have a good understanding of what the impact would be with any particular option that we're developing. And account for economic, cultural, and ethnic diversity. And so that is basically being mindful of the demographics of the schools right now and trying to, as we develop options, look and see what the impact is on demographics as we make a boundary line move one way or the other. Make sure that we're not moving things in the wrong direction and trying to make and maintain that equitability that you have in your district. Try to make efforts to establish contiguous zones. So this is one thing that's somewhat of a critical component of this process, in that I said you have probably 6 or 7 different satellite areas that exist in your in the district. So areas that are not connected to the main zone. Charles Huber Elementary comes to mind as one that has a large area that's in the sort of the south center of the district, and the school is in the northern part of the district, and that those neighborhoods cross over a couple of schools to get to Huber. And so we're trying to see if there's any way, and that exists in a couple of other schools as well. And that was just for example. But what we're going to try to do is see if we can't create one contiguous boundary, one boundary per school, while maintaining and adhering to these other criteria. And to try to use major roads and natural boundaries wherever feasible to define zones. So this is using major roads and maybe waterways and those types of things, highways as the boundary lines. What we try not to do is try not to draw the line through residential streets. And I know that there are a lot of residential communities in Huber Heights that have a lot of students in them. And we'll do everything we can to try to avoid that and keep communities move, they move together, and try not to draw the line down a residential street whenever possible. Sometimes it's hard to avoid it, but we will do our best to try to adhere to that while looking at all the other criteria. So like I said, all these criteria in no particular order or priority. And the best plan is one that touches on all criteria but doesn't focus solely on one of these criteria. If we focus only on one of these elements of the criteria, we start to deviate from the others. I forgot to mention at the beginning of this webinar that there is a Q&A feature on this, that if you look at the little toolbar on the Zoom, you'll see a Q&A button. If you guys want at any time throughout this presentation, feel free to ask your question on that Q&A. And when we're done with our presentation, we will answer some questions as time permits. So feel free to use that as a resource to ask any questions that you may have, and we will look at those and review those questions when the presentation is over. So let's talk about the stakeholders. There are different people involved and different groups that we're working with to engage and work with on this process. So we are the consultants, we are the facilitators, putting the materials together, facilitating the work, scheduling meetings, and summarizing and coordinating all the information that's been received, and putting things together for this effort. We have an internal planning team, and this is a group of school administrators, including central office, transportation, planning, and then we have school principals as well in this internal planning team. And this is the group who is working and preparing things to share with you. Coming in October, we will be sharing some maps or a map with you that they feel best adheres to these criteria, and wanted to get some input from you and get your feedback on those, on the maps that are being shared. So from now all the way until October, this internal planning team is going to be working to try to evaluate maps, look at developing maps, probably discontinuing some maps, and just keep working towards preparation to engage with you as members of the public on come this upcoming fall. We are also working with another group called the Public Advisory Committee, and this is a group think of them as a focus group, but it's made up of public officials and business leaders in the Huber Heights area. The district has been working with the team made like this on facility planning considerations and discussions. And it's a good objective group made up of business leaders and people throughout this community. And we're going to work with this group just to share some information with them, some maps, and through a couple times throughout this process. It is really more like a focus group, and where they will give us early input and information regarding maps that are being considered and anything else regarding the project, where we can take that into consideration. And as we work towards our work engaging with you as public and sharing some maps and getting your input at the second public information session. General public are you guys, and you are very important in this process. We have built a web page, and I'll share that with you here in a little bit, where you can submit comments through the entire process. We have this public information is just more of an information session, and no maps are being shared tonight. No options have been drafted or finalized for you to review tonight. But this is really more of an information session for you to know about the process and to know how you can communicate, where you can go to find things and things like that. There's a general feedback form on the web page that we've developed where you can easily go in there using a phone or any digital device and provide input through that. And that's something that we will be tracking and studying and sharing with other members of the team as well. And then the school board charges the group with their responsibilities. They basically set the framework for this process and let the work take its course. And then the superintendent and myself will be presenting the redistricting plan to the school board at the end of this process. Let's talk a little bit about the timeline so you can kind of see how this plays out in terms of timing. So here we are, April 22nd, doing our first public info session. Up till now, we have been collecting data and information, putting data together, taking student enrollment, mapping them out so that we know where all the students live, and so we can count students on any street using our mapping technology, and then working to build baseline understanding of how schools are being utilized and what the demographic composition of schools are. And then we're also starting to work on options development and working with the IPT on that. Our first public advisory committee meeting is May 20th, and that's where we'll be meeting with the secondary group to share some maps. There will be some options that'll be shared at that meeting, and to get some input from them. The public advisory committee meeting materials will be shared online, and so those are things that we will be that we will be posting online. So you could start to see some things that are being discussed and considered starting as early as May. We'll have that first meeting with them, and then we kind of have a little bit of a break over the summer, but the internal planning team is going to continue working. And so we will be working through June, July, and August. And then come September, we will meet with the Public Advisory Committee again in September. And that there we will share maybe an updated set of maps as we prepare for this October 24th meeting. And the October 24th meeting is really the key meeting for you as members of the public, where it will be in person at a central location in the district. And we will have maps to share with you, a presentation about our process, and then we'll have maps to share with you, some options to showing potential redistricting scenarios. And then we'll be around the map to have discussions with you, and there will be a survey that accompanies that. One more public advisory committee meeting in November, just to share some feedback and any changes that may have been made and any progress or updates since the October public information session and survey results and those types of things. And then the December 12th is when the redistricting plan will be presented to the Board of Education. So talk a little bit about our process and our approach. And we have all of this available online too, so that you can go back and look at this in more detail at a later time. We collect data. We've gone through that, as you saw on the timeline, put this information together and converted it into GIS. Then we're developing options. That's the third phase of this. And then we work with the internal planning team, public advisory committee, and the public to start engaging and get input as we continue to work on options. We've collected data from a variety of resources. Huber Heights City Schools and Montgomery County GIS. GIS stands for Geographic Information Systems. They have a lot of good information that we can use. The school district provides us student enrollment data. So we have a database of the students that we map out onto a map, and then we convert that into something that can be shared publicly in a format called planning blocks. But this really gives us really accurate and informed data on how many students live on any street, what grade levels are they, what schools do they go to. So as we move a line or consider moving a line one way or the other, we are very confident in knowing how many students may be impacted with that decision. The county, like I said, gives us a lot of data on addressing. We have the property lines, subdivision data, and road networks, and then housing information. So we've collected data, but as we continue to do our work, we will continue to be open to receive any information that is available for the benefit of this particular effort. So, like I said, we've converted everything into our mapping format. One of the things that you'll see as we work through this are what we call planning blocks. So when you look at some of these maps, you'll see a little small subsets within an attendance area. And these are areas that we have cut into small pieces and parts. Think about pieces of a puzzle that make up an entire attendance area. The PB number tells us what planning block that is. And so if you're members of the public, if you're giving us input, you can tell us what planning block you live in. I'm in PB 10, or I'm in PB 22, or 2019, whatever that number is. And that helps us really understand exactly where you're at. You can also tell us what subdivision you live in, or maybe what street intersections and things like that. And we can definitely cue into where you're talking about. And below that PB number gives us a number of students that live inside that planning block. And so that helps us understand the numbers of students within each of these small areas. And they are, as you can see, some of these do come into subdivision areas and things like that. The focus is to keep communities together. If they move, we try to move them together, but if or they stay put together. And so we will be evaluating these planning blocks can always be modified. Just because an area is divided like it shows here doesn't mean it's guaranteed to move. It just helps give us a granular understanding of how many students live throughout different areas and streets and communities within the school district. You'll see on the website that I share with you, there is a background report that we've developed, and this helps to give a lot of background information of just a introductory foundational understanding of elements of the school district. We have things such as the objectives of this project, our criteria, we have stakeholder roles and responsibilities, the timeline, and there's some mapping that we have in here that shows you, and then there's also enrollment and utilization tables. So these are things that are basically in an introductory report that we use as a starting point, and this helps you understand data and information that we're seeing. And we always tell the planning team, if there's any questions about what's the capacity of a school or what's the enrollment of a school that we're using for the study, it's better not to speculate, but to refer back to the background report so everybody is sharing the same information and on the same page. So there's an online map that we have developed, and that online map has the current zones and also has planning blocks on it. And this map eventually will show options on it. You could type in an address and it'll zoom to your house and it'll tell you what schools you're zoned to currently. And as options start to be developed, it'll also notify you where you are now and where you may be in option 1 or 2. And so it's a good resource to use. I love to use it because it really helps me understand how boundaries for the district relate to where houses are and where the streets are and things like that. So I'm going to show you real quick what this looks like. And this is the online map. And so this is your school district. If you open this with a phone, sometimes you don't see a left side toolbar. That toolbar could be clicked on by clicking on this little arrow in the left center of your map. You can see it there. I'll click on that, and that pulls up some layer options here. They may be nested, but if you click on it, it'll open up. And one of the things that we have on here for starters is the planning block information. So if you click the top button and then you click, say, K6, this will tell you information. It starts to populate the planning blocks, and it also shows you the counts. So this tells you this is looking at K through 6th graders and how many students live in each of these planning blocks. And so this helps give us information, as well as the public, of some of the challenges here. And some of these could have 100 students in them, but others may have 0. And so this helps us really get oriented with the geography of the district. And we're not looking at junior high or high school, but we included these just so that you can have a full comprehensive understanding of the number of students living within each of these planning blocks at different grade levels. But K6 will be our focus as we work through this. These planning blocks can be modified as we work through this process. We could maybe cut them further, or we may be grouping them, or taking notes on planning blocks to keep together and things like that. If there are options are starting to be drafted that look like they're splitting a residential area, these are all things that we'll be looking at and working with these planning blocks to start building options and moving areas one way or the other, and as we continue to evaluate a redistricting plan. And like I said, if you click on here, click in any particular area, it tells you what elementary you're in now. And when we get options going, it'll start to pop up, tell you where you are in option 1 or 2 and currently. There's also a little hourglass. You can type in your address here, and it'll zoom into your address and tell you information that way. So it's a good resource, something that we will be using for this process, and a good way to communicate to members of the public, as well as for the planning folks to see what's going on. That site address is croppermap.com/HuberHeights_OH. And we have, I'll show you the web page has a link to this as well. So this is just a snapshot of the map that I was just previewing with you. But let's talk a little bit about where you can find things. So if you go to the district webpage, there is a redistricting button there right now, and I'll just show you real quick what that looks like. So if you go to the redistricting site, your Huber Heights City Schools webpage, you'll see that there's an HHCS redistricting button down here. And this will most likely have some baseline information in it. And right now it just says under construction, because we're still kicking this process off this evening. But as the process starts to mature, you'll start seeing more information on here. What it will do is it'll also redirect you to a site that we are managing, and this is called hhcsredistricting.com. And that's a site that you can use. This is a site where we put information on here. So the demographic study that we did, as Superintendent Enix mentioned, is there. And then the background report, we will have that posted online here so that you can see that background report. It'll probably be on there. I imagine it'll be ready and posted on there tomorrow. You see the timeline here. And then when you scroll down, you start to see some other pieces of information here. These are just quick links to the district website, that web map that I mentioned. We have a project maps folder so that you can just look at the current maps, and then as options are developed, they will start to show up here. Right now, this has maps that shows you maps and information for each school, current zones, and then you see your planning block maps and things like that. That's some information that we have developed as for starters, that for every single school. And you'll see that we also have a general feedback form here where if you click on this, it pulls up information that you can provide input at any time. So this gives you the opportunity, a vehicle to give us input, to ask questions, and tell us any input that you have on the onset of this. This information will be studied by the internal planning team, as well as the public advisory committee. And it's good information. It's a method for you to reach out to us, and it's centralized so that everybody on the planning teams can benefit from it and share and see what's being asked and said. We have our public information session 1 link here, and we will post all the materials. Like Superintendent Enoch said, I'm recording this, and so this will be shared. This will be recording of this will be posted on this section of the actual meeting of the web page. And then we'll also, any materials will be posted on here that we shared tonight. And as meetings occur, you'll start to see more information popping up here that will be shared. So the public advisory committee section will be here. We'll create sections for each meeting, as well as the second public information session on here, so you can go back and look and use this as sort of a one-stop shop for redistricting, and a place centralized that you can refer to for information about the process. If you don't like the general feedback form and you prefer communication in a different way, you can always email us. You have my email is info@croppergis.com, and the Superintendent Enoch's is superintendent@myhhcs.org. We do prefer that the communication stay streamlined through the general comment form, so everybody can benefit from that. But if you do feel the need to reach out, here is our information, and it's something that we may not be able to respond to every single question, email or phone call that comes through, but it's something that we will that if it comes through, it's potentially possible that we'll take that information and put that into the general feedback form, so that we have a good record of all input that has been received through the course of this study. So that is it in a nutshell. We do have some time for questions, and I do see a couple questions that have been posted so far. Would you like me to cover those, Superintendent Enochs?
I will be happy to tag team with you there, Matt. Just a clarifying statement about the website that you have created. We are intending to link that website directly to that button on our website starting tomorrow. So your website should be live as a link as early as tomorrow. I would say by end of day tomorrow, that should be a live link that will go directly to the redistricting website that you've created.
Okay.
All right. So if we get started with some of the questions, the first question that we see here, I may ask one of our panelists who has joined us, Mr. Dahl, our Director of Operations. With redistricting, has there been any consideration in reducing the radius for busing? That falls under his directions. Gary, if you'd like to jump in and discuss that for us.
Sure. At this time, there's not been any discussion regarding that. That does not mean that that's not something that the board and superintendent would consider. But at this time, that there's not been any discussion changing the attendance zones for busing.
Obviously, as any maps or boundary changes happen, there will be an impact on transportation in some way. But that is, as you've stated, Matt, that's one of several factors to consider throughout this entire process.
Sure.
If that, Mr. Hahn, if that doesn't address your question fully, feel free to do a follow-up in the chat. We'll get down to that in order. Sarah, you have a question regarding the opportunity for students to enroll in schools based on needs versus home location on an individual basis. Kate Little, our Director of Student Services is one of our panelists. I will maybe start with that. Kate, if you want to join in on it, that would be great. We do have an interdistrict transfer request policy that is currently being utilized by a number of folks. It is something that is currently something that can happen, but as we're going through the redistricting process, this is a policy we anticipate getting reviewed and some decisions being made about how that will look going forward. Obviously, engaging in this kind of a process is intended to normalize our buildings, as Mr. Cropper said, but also understand that there are times where there are need-based reasons for having students attend different buildings. Kate, would you like to join us?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Enix. To answer her question, certainly we'll take into considerations the needs of any of our students with special needs as we go through this process, but that will be on an individual needs basis.
Okay, thank you. Again, please ask follow-up questions if we do not fully answer your questions satisfactorily. We'll be glad to continue on if possible. Kim Barnhart, HHEA president, great question here. We hear this one a lot. Huber Heights has a lot of rental homes. How are you able to get data collection from rentals if students live there? And you use the Vinebrook as an example. Matt, maybe this could be something where you take a look at the information we provided and can answer that a little bit more clearly from your perspective.
Certainly. Well, a couple things. When we map out the students, we know where the students are living, so we do have a good understanding of student yields and how many students may be coming out of different housing types. In addition to that, the internal planning team and the different stakeholders really bring a lot of local knowledge to the table. And so your input as members of the community is critical to this. As we work on options, we're talking with this IPT members about areas and talking about the communities and things like that. And there's a lot of local knowledge that they have about areas within the district that they can help give us guidance on the types of homes and how you get in and out of the neighborhoods and things like that, and where students are walking and where traffic is in the evenings and those types of things. And then that will also be extended to the public advisory committee. And then when we get to the public meetings in October, and even leading up to there, the public will be giving us input about things that we may not know and insights towards dynamics of communities. We also have information from the local planning agencies about housing types and information on how the communities are built out and whether they're single or multifamily, rental, owner, and those types of things. So I think we have a lot of good resources and basically putting things together and tapping into different resources to get better understanding of things that we need to know.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Matt, for chiming in there. We have a couple of questions regarding the carriage trails being considered being added to the school zone. I think this is a really, really important question for everyone to really fully understand. That's really regarding annexation, which is obviously a topic at the city level. The redistricting process is completely separate from that. We are strictly looking at current boundaries of Huber Heights City Schools and the schools that are serviced within those boundaries without any at all consideration for annexation. That is not something that is a part of this process and is really, again, a city-driven a process to go through. But again, no consideration at all regarding annexation. Another question regarding this is targeting the 25-26 school year. Yes, that is correct. Our timeline right now leads us through a pretty quick process, really, for some recommendations to the board by the end of this calendar year of 2024. And that will give us time for whatever the decisions made by all that are involved in the recommendations that become finalized for really putting a plan in place to start the 25-26 school year. The question regarding all the new homes and apartments being added, and will that change the numbers and impacts? Matt, I might defer this to you. I know I will tell you this is one of our most commonly asked questions, and it really is a very good topic for understanding, the optics of construction and what we see with new houses, new apartments, new units for people to live in, but also kind of addressing all the variables that go into population enrollment, particularly out-migration that we talked extensively about last year during the population enrollment study. Could you dive into that a little bit for us?
Yes, and so the question is, how are we addressing the amount of new homes and apartments being added to the district, and will that change the planning block numbers impact? And so this goes in line with that criteria and account for future growth. And so we will be gaining a good understanding of where there is development activity, where homes are being built, or where apartments are being built. And as we work through that, getting that input and getting an understanding of the number of homes that are coming online and things like that, we will be as proactive as we can to make sure that a school can take any new students that are coming in. This goes in line with what I was saying about if there's an area that's expected to grow a lot, then we may not want to have it be at the district average of utilization. We may want to have it have a little bit fewer students so that they can fill in to be a similar number as the other buildings. But that's something that we are always mindful of and proactive in understanding where new homes are and new coming in apartments to the best of our ability. These boundaries do typically hold for a good amount of time. I know it's been some time since this district has redistricted in the past, and once one of these plans or boundaries do change, they usually hold for a number of years. And so we try to be as proactive so that they can hold as long as possible. And so we will be as proactive as we can in anticipating future growth. But we don't want to over anticipate and over assume, because sometimes growth starts to lag and development may not occur in one development or another as quickly as expected. So there's a fine balance there of focusing on things that we're certain is going to happen, but not take too much consideration for things that are speculative and not sure. So that because we want to build these for things that we are most certain of, that we know.
Matt, this is probably, excuse me, a place to kind of reemphasize a couple other things too that you referenced in your presentation. As the district was very intentional about trying to maintain equity, equality across various different subgroups of the district. How will this really be studied, and options to try to keep the district kind of in that same kind of equitable state? I know we've talked about that extensively. I know that's a strong value across particularly 5 elementaries and maintaining that kind of equity. So can you talk a little bit about how that is done and how you use the data collected from the district as part of the development of new maps?
Yeah, so with the student data, we have information on the students' demographics of the students. And so as we work on this, we start with the baseline understanding of what are the demographics of the schools currently before any boundary line is considered to be moved. And as we move lines and develop options, we will summarize those same demographic characteristics, because if we know, like with our mapping, if we move a group of students or a neighborhood or community to another school, we know how many their students there are, what grade levels they are, what are the general demographics of those students, and then we can then run new summaries, estimates of what the demographic composition would be. And so so in addition to this number of students and estimated enrollment, we will also be looking at current and any options, what the impact would be on demographics. And so that we can make sure as we move zones here and there that we're not creating an issue where one school is less equitable than another one.
Thank you. Another question that's been asked is, with redistricting, if a school boundary changes or there's a move to a different school, are students able to be grandfathered to stay at the school they currently attend? This will, of course, be a very important discussion topic as this process unfolds. Again, part of the plan for going through this process is to make sure we are trying to normalize our building sizes and maintain equity and balance across buildings. And, it will be something as we further go along and start looking at maps that, as we start, again, trying to normalize everything, it will obviously have a major impact if the idea of grandfathering or legacy types of enrollment is able to move forward. So I would anticipate this being, a topic of conversation with our Public Advisory Committee, with the Board of Education, and as new as decisions or recommendations start coming forward, the idea of how to address that question will probably be much more able to be answered as this process continues along in the future. Next question, will it be considered complete on December of 2024? The best, I would say the best answer we can give right now is that is an anticipated recommendation timeline anyway for finalization along that timeline from here through December. It does not mean it has to be 100% held to that, but that is the idea, with really one of the most important parts of that is not only having a thorough review of this entire process to get to some recommendations, but also so that there is enough time for implementation of those recommendations about whatever is finally approved by the Board of Education. Lots of things will change based upon the final recommendations, all the way up to and including things like transportation, staffing, how we plan for all things related to district, and does that have an impact on times and all those kinds of things that are a part of changes that could be made. We would like to really have the entirety of that second semester of next school year to finalize all of the changes that may occur with whatever plan is approved. I hope that answers that question. All right, next question I see here, because of the unknowns with future growth annexation, there could be another redistricting based off future growths. Is this also being discussed? And if the growth isn't there, then are there contingencies in place in case one school is underutilized once this new redistricting is implemented? It's a great question. I think, Matt, you kind of addressed that a little bit previously with, a little bit of the unknowns, just because there is a plan for development of a certain area, or whether those are homes or apartments. Sometimes those are not always fully built out in the expected amount that might be originally planned. So I think the answer I think that you had tried to share is, we do our best with what we have currently, and with anticipated growth, we would want to take that into consideration for the elementary buildings that would be impacted by that growth the most, so that there's room for additional students to move in there should that fully be realized. Is that pretty accurate, Matt?
Yes, sir. Well said. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Shalyn, one of our curriculum supervisors, has asked the question, do we have any plans to review options for grade level banded buildings? I'll start with that one, as it has been a regular topic throughout the district the entire time that I have been here, almost 2 years now. The idea behind grade banded buildings has, I think there's enough interest to consider what that could look like. I think there are some limitations that we have. Matt can probably address that a little bit more. I think 5 elementaries, which is an uneven number, does create some challenges inherently. I think the size of our buildings, or the capacity of our buildings, also being roughly in that 650 to 700, more so closer to 700 or so, does create some boundary or some difficulties, at least with the current size of our classes of students at each grade level. So it's not that it's an impossible idea to think about, but it may have an impact on entire facility use across the district. And Gary, maybe you can jump in on this too, as this is very much a facility-oriented question.
Yeah, I know that it's on Matt's radar. However, it's again, it's a situation where if you start grade banning certain buildings and not all buildings, it becomes problematic, I think, with the community as a whole. And again, capacities, there is some leveling over the different grade bands, which does help with population control inside the buildings. However, it does create other problems in other buildings based upon how you divide those grade bands up.
And if I could just add a couple things to that as well. Typically, we do have looked at grade level banding as it was described. Sometimes it's referred to as grade centering or school pairing. It's something that is a measure that we do use as an option when we work with districts across the United States. Typically, it's one that you use sort of as a plan B if you can't come to a viable solution through just moving boundaries. So bringing in for everyone's benefit, what this refers to grade banding is if you have two schools that serve one zone. So you have one zone and say you have a K through third grade school and then a fourth through sixth grade school, and students in the entire community or the entire attendance area would go to school for K through third, and then all those students would then migrate to the other building, all the same group, for grades 4 through 6. So that is a common method that's used across the country, something that is utilized a lot. But I think that usually what we recommend is to take a look at what can we accomplish our objectives by moving zone lines without pairing schools together, unless there's some clear benefit to doing it. There are a lot of pros and cons to doing that, to doing the grade banding method. One of the challenges as it relates to facilities is these schools are set up for K through sixth grade students. Say if we make a school and put K through third grade in a building, like in one of these buildings, they have to be retrofitted for a much larger number of kindergartners. For example, kindergarten classrooms typically have a bathroom close by, either in the room or nearby, in smaller bathrooms. And so there things have to happen in order to adapt to a paired model, a grade banded model. So facilities would need some improvements in order to make that work. And that's just one example of some of the different things that need to be considered before you decide to do something like that.
All right, moving on to the next question. This does not mean that areas that are currently serviced by Huber Heights City Schools will no longer be serviced by Huber Heights City Schools. That's a very emphatic no, we're not moving anyone out of the district. So just like we're not talking about annexation with additional students coming in from other locations, we're also not looking at any boundary changes of Huber Heights City Schools as it currently exists. So I hope that alleviates any concern there, but thank you for asking. The last couple more questions have been posted. The video replay will be posted. Yes, I think this video, as Matt shared, will be on the Cropper GIS website that has been created, that we will link tomorrow to our district website. So you'll be able to go to the redistricting button on our webpage. It will take you straight to the website that's been created for this process, and the replay of this will be available at your discretion at any time you would like to view it. Next question, will you be considering moving sixth grade to Weisenborn or kindergarten to Studebaker? That's a big question. I think maybe Mr. Cropper addressed that a little bit when we're starting to talk about facilities, and Mr. Dahl as well. It's, all things I think are probably on the table for consideration, but there are lots of implications with big moves like that as well. Again, particularly with Studebaker or Weisenborn, the capacity restrictions, the limitations to classes, and the retrofitting of sorts. There's a lot to consider, but that's part of the work of this whole process is taking a very thorough look at everything that we have in the district that might be a consideration. What are the pros, cons, implications, costs, et cetera, to make all of those things a possibility. Looks like the last question that we currently have, data collection analysis is considered at the beginning of March or April 2024 timeframe. Yes, that is accurate. Any consideration or room in the timeline budget to consider another round of data collection in September for consideration of the December plan report? It's a great question. You know, the initial, and Matt, I'll let you kind of talk a little bit about that too. The initial data report that was shared with Cropper GIS when we first began this entire process was the initial October report that was submitted back then. When I reconnected with Mr. Cropper about what 3 or 4 weeks ago, maybe in preparation for this, what we noticed is that the numbers were pretty substantially different now than they were in October. And so they were different enough across the buildings that we felt it was better to have more live data, or at least more current data, to be more accurate for what we are seeing right now. We will still, of course, do our October data that allows for all students generally to have been enrolled as well as withdrawn, and we'll see where our numbers are. It may have some level of difference, but we would anticipate that being relatively close enough that our current data and processing will still be a viable option. I hope does that make sense, Matt?
Yes, I think that, you know, we're working with data as of March, but as we continue our work, we have all of the administrators working with us. And if we start hearing that enrollment has changed significantly since we've collected it in March, it's definitely something that we'll look at and consider potentially taking a fresh look with new enrollment data. We want to make sure that everything that we work with is that we are as informed as possible leading up to implementation of this. And so I think it's definitely possible. It's something that we have done in the past. I'd say about half of our projects will update information and then if it's necessary.
All right, that comes to an end of the questions that are in the Q&A. If there are any last minute questions, I know we are reaching close to the hour mark, which is what we anticipated for this meeting. If there are any final questions, please feel free to do those and we'll answer those best we can. In the meantime, just a couple of things to remind everyone, once again, the website that will house this video, as well as all the information currently that's been collected on the website that Cropper GIS has created, will become live tomorrow. And I would encourage you to please take some time to review the information that has been all kind of the background information to now that has helped lead us to where we are today. And we'll use that as the next phase of this project will continue. If there are meetings scheduled with our internal planning team, with the public advisory committee, just 4 weeks from now, I believe it is. So this will continue to move pretty rapidly. And as Mr. Cropper said, that the work will be happening internally throughout the summer as we take the feedback from the public advisory committee and start refining the work over the summer to be prepared for the September meeting that's going to be right after the start of next school year. There is one last question that we can address here. Are there any plans for preparing the students for all of these changes? It's a great question. We know obviously students are impacted significantly as a result of any of these changes. Not currently any direct plans, as we don't have any real direction for who, how many, what these changes may look like. But as we get closer and closer to recommendations and the planning phase for these moves, that will certainly be a part of the considerations as we look ahead to the 25-26 school year. Great question, one that will certainly be of top priority as this becomes more of a finalized recommendation and eventually an approval. All right. I think that's the last question, Mr. Cropper. Again, Would like to just to thank everyone who attended, and for those that are watching this on your own time later, we appreciate your interest in this, your participation, and certainly please stay engaged. There'll be lots of opportunities to do so. Mr. Cropper, again, thank you for all of your information tonight and for your partnership. I'll turn it over to you to wrap up.
Well, thank you, Mr. Enix, and thank you all for your involvement tonight and your thoughtful questions. I would just encourage you to keep an eye on the district webpage and the redistricting website, and earmark your calendars for that October 24th public information session, and just stay tuned for more communication about that. And just please don't be shy to ask any questions, and let us know if there's anything that we can help clarify. And we look forward to working with you on this project.
All right. Thank you, everyone, and have a great evening.